Here we are with another episode with our coaches and umpires at the spring games. I'm Allison Strange, and as usual, I am accompanied with Skeeter, Melissa Gentili, and Anthony Small. We have two guests today. One is Jason Smith, who has officiated at the highest levels of softball, including NPF Pro Ball, and he's currently an ACC, SEC Division I umpire and does all the other divisions, all the other conferences that are really associated with the East Coast, and getting into championship play as well. And our guest today is Leslie Huntington. She is a veteran coach. She's been coaching at the collegiate level for 24 years, 20 years at Wisconsin-Eau Claire, and she has been to the national championship on 2 occasions, including a win. So she is a national championship coach, which is really awesome. And I think that this combination of experience will give us some really insightful back and forth today. So I'm excited about it. Now, we would like to talk about today, coach and umpires, the issue, or coaches, my apologies, Skeeter, the issue of the catcher and her framing the pitch. Now, I love this one because usually I can't contribute to these conversations, but I was a Division I catcher, so I get to play a little bit today too. So this should be exciting. We do want to limit this to 10-15 minutes, so let's not get too carried away, but let's talk about the catcher framing the pitch. And coach, if you can start, give us that example you were telling me about earlier with your scrimmage and what you saw when you got behind the catcher and were watching that ball come across the plate.
Yeah, sure. And I apologize if there's background noise. We got like 7 inches of snow yesterday, and which is a record for October, and I am not pleased about it, but hopefully the rain tomorrow is going to get rid of it. But they're right outside my office window here moving snow, so I apologize if there's any background noise.
Well, that was a backwards plug for the spring games because, you know, it never snows in Florida. So
right.
we're really excited.
We don't have any snow
we're not
here.
excited for you. We're not excited for you.
Yeah,
but we're excited for what that could mean for us.
Believe me, we will be there if there is any possible way in this world of COVID. So,
Coach Huntington,
anyway, yeah.
You know, I brushed sand off my driveway yesterday.
Yeah, thanks. You know, I am boycotting my shovel right now because it is way too early for this much snow. So I just said, you know what, I am not getting the shovel out. I am letting this melt because it probably will in a couple of days. But it was pretty, I mean, it was nasty outside last night. So anyway, enough about that.
So how did you scrimmage in the snow? Did you?
Oh, we didn't
outside?
do that. This has been a couple weeks ago.
Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, so again, I apologize for the background noise if you can hear any of that. But yeah, so my suggestion on this topic came up because we have scrimmaged several times this fall. Not in the snow, but we scrimmaged several times this fall. And over the course of those scrimmages, I set up a screen behind the catcher, and I'm probably 3, maybe 4 feet behind the catcher. So not set up where an umpire would be, but fairly close. And I put myself behind there for a couple of reasons. One, you know, even though our players, we like them to call balls and strikes, sometimes their uncertainty just kind of disrupts the flow. And so I put myself behind the plate so I could call balls and strikes and be very decisive about that. And then secondly, just to get a better look at what my pitchers were throwing, if they were working the corners, if they were, you know, feeding fat ones down the middle, that type of thing. And I didn't go back there with the intention of seeing how my catchers were receiving the ball. I went back there just with the intention of calling balls and strikes. And after I got done one of the days, I started thinking about it, and I was thinking about what was my focus as I was standing back there watching the pitches in calling balls and strikes. Was it simply on where the ball crossed the plate and where the ball crossed the batter, or was I paying any attention to their glove, the catcher's glove, and their ability to frame a pitch? Because we do spend a lot of time on how our catchers receive pitches. And to my surprise, after I reflected a little bit, I realized that I paid no attention at all to the gloves of my catchers, and strictly paid attention to the ball and where it was relative to the plate and to the batter. And so my question is, how much do umpires look at a catcher and her ability to receive in a position that makes the ball look more like a strike? Or is it simply our only focus is on the ball. And I have a suspicion how that might be answered here. But I'm really interested to know what that focus is. And then maybe we can even talk just a little bit about calling the river, for example. So that's my question.
That is a great question. And you sound like an umpire.
Well, I did actually, I umpired high school softball when I was in college. So
Yeah.
I think I have a little bit of a unique perspective too. And I say that
Right.
to my players and my parents all the time, is that, you know, I pick my battles with umpires because I've been there. And I think every coach should be an umpire so that they can understand, you know, how challenging it can be to make those calls. But so
we get a lot
I
of JV games. We do
I
a
do
lot of
have-
JV games at the spring games, so there's some opportunity there, Coach.
I'll get my players signed up.
I love it.
Oh wow, that would be awesome. But that is a great question, and I'll start off, and then I know Jason will finish the answer. The catcher's glove really has nothing to do with what I call. Absolutely nothing. In fact, the more that she moves it, the more she tells me that she knows it's a ball, and she's trying to convince me that it's a strike. Jason?
Yep, absolutely. I prefer a catcher. You know, if a ball is, you know, let's say questionable on the corner, if she sticks it and just gives, you know, a little snap of the wrist, she's gonna get, there's more of a chance of her getting that strike rather than her drag it into the middle of the strike zone. Like Anthony just said, the more you drag it, the more you're convincing me that you're trying to sell me a used car.
And this is another thing. All right, and not meaning to put you on the spot, Coach, which I'm going to do anyway. What is the strike zone?
Well, I mean, every pitch my pitcher throws is a strike.
There you go. But what is the actual zone?
Well, you know, so the inside of the ball on the outside of the plate, if that inside of the ball catches the outside of the plate,
Okay.
that should be a strike.
Okay.
So essentially the river, but not to the point where that ball is, there's space between the plate and the ball.
Okay. What about high-low?
Oh, that one to me is challenging because
Right.
I look at that as the bottom of the sternum
Perfect.
and the top of the kneecaps.
Perfect. Now, okay, so and what we have to understand as umpires is that there's only one zone. It's not your zone, it's not the pitcher zone, it is the book zone. The book only has one zone. Top of ball, bottom sternum, top of ball, top of knee. That is all we should be calling. And I think a lot of people get into and the way that I teach it is, if you don't know what to call, then you're not going to know what to call, right? So you've got to know what the zone is first before you can even attempt to call it, right? Now, and this is the way that I explain the sides. When I'm at Florida and Florida State and you're doing the SEC, you do not move. That ball must stay on the plate. And I've got an All-American Division I pitcher that is throwing that ball. So she knows how to manipulate those sides.
I have a question related to this then. You know, obviously, if we're saying that her glove, and I, as a former catcher, I agree with that. You never want to be selling. You know, if your best bet is you're getting 3 inches and it's just that wrist snap, that's it. And if you're trying to get more than that, you're trying to sell something that nobody wants. But one of the things that I was taught by an umpire was to get as close to the plate as I could get, so that the umpire could get as close to the plate, and then to be as low as I could be, so that the umpire could see that ball coming across the plate. Otherwise, the farther you get away, the harder it is to see when the ball comes across the plate, where it is relative to the plate. Do you think there's any validity to that from, for the catcher?
All right, so the one thing that I teach my umpires, that catcher does not dictate what you do. You umpire, right? I don't care how you do it, but the coach is coaching the umpire. I mean, the catcher. That's her job. That catcher can do whatever she wants to do. Your job is to call balls and strikes. Whatever you have to do to get into the position to call balls and strikes, that's what you do. But I'm not changing the catcher's mechanics just to make my job easier. No, you're a professional. Work to fight for the best angle that you can fight to get the call right. So I'm not going to be during the game. I'm not telling the catcher move up, get lower, stick that. No, you're not doing that. You fight as an umpire to get that correct strike zone. Jason?
Now, in fairness, that was taught to me early. It was not taught to me in college. That was in those formative years. So I appreciated what I learned from that umpire because it did stick with me.
As umpires, we're part of the field. Okay. Our job is to call balls and strikes, safe out, fair foul, and so on. Our job is to get into position to make the call. Doesn't matter how big, how small the catcher gets, we have to adjust to them. Their job is not to adjust to us. So we have to be able to make that adjustment to get into the position to make ball strike calls. Sometimes it's not easy, but I'll tell you, a couple of years ago, I was doing a game with Iowa. When I met the catcher, she was looking me straight in the eye. She was as tall as I was. As soon as she got behind the plate, she disappeared. She just, the way she crouched into her position, not an issue. But if she sits higher as a catcher, I have to make the adjustment to see balls and strikes. I can't blame it on her. My job is to get into the position to call balls and strikes and see the zone.
Absolutely.
I love that you say that because I've actually had umpires in the past tell me, well, your catcher's blocking me out. And it drives me crazy because
Absolutely.
I'm of the same mindset. And as a former catcher, yes, we teach get small and, things like that. But if a catcher is blocking you out, whose fault is that? To me, that's an umpire's, like you said, that's an umpire's job, is to get to a position where you're not blocked out.
Right.
Is that what you guys are saying?
I've never told the catcher, show me more of the zone. I need to see more of the zone.
Right.
And that's definitely not something that I teach. You've just got to fight to let the catcher do their job and you do yours. However you've got to do it, that's fine. But you're not telling the catcher, you're not going to revamp her whole mechanics just so that you can call a ball or a strike.
Right.
Well, and that was going to be my kind of question and comment about that is, an umpire approaches a coach during a game and says, your catcher's blocking my, I can't see what I need to see. And as a coach, I'm sitting here going, holy crap. Like, okay, so we're losing strikes because you're telling me that I have to now make an adjustment in the middle of a game with my catcher because you're not able to see the strike zone. So I guess a follow-up question to that would be, how do you handle that as a coach?
Well, obviously, once you hear certain things from umpires, and the more that we do this, the more that you'll start understanding. Once I start hearing things from certain umpires, I'm like, okay, that's what I have, right? And it's just like what we talked about earlier. At least now I've got a perception of how this umpire is going to umpire my game. So if he's saying those words, okay, I remember we talked about this. That's the type of umpire I have, right? And some umpires, they're committed to the way that they think, and that's just it.
So what do you do?
Right, Jason, what would you suggest?
I mean, it's it's a great question. And I hate to put it on you, Coach. And in that situation, if he's not going to make the adjustment,
Yeah, I think
you're
if
going to
you
have
can-
your catcher make some kind of adjustment.
right.
And it shouldn't happen, but I guess you're left with the decision: do we just take what he's given us, or do we make an adjustment?
Right.
And then what are the opportunities after the game to communicate what she's experienced with her assigner? And is that something that collegiate assigners should be looking out for or responsive to?
I in that situation, if I'm a coach and I have to make my catcher adjust to an umpire, I think I might take that up with an assigner.
Yeah, and I've done that type of thing before. You know, we have evaluations that we're supposed to fill out after every doubleheader that we play, every conference game. And so, you know, there's one time that I can recall that I pretty much didn't even try to be tactful about the way I talked about an umpire because it was just so bad. And interestingly enough, that pair of umpires after that game, I never saw them again.
Right.
And so I think that both coaches were so unhappy with how they performed, and we both were very vocal about that with our assigner, and they were never assigned to one of our games again. And I'm not sure they're even umpiring anymore, but so that's, I appreciate that response, and just figuring that out. You know, maybe I have a catcher that traditionally maybe sets up a little bit higher, and if I get an umpire that makes that kind of comment, if I have another catcher that I know traditionally sets up a little bit lower, maybe that's an in-game adjustment. Maybe I make a change at that position because I know that I'm going to get, you know, I may get more strikes called if I have a catcher that sets up a little bit lower. And that leads to kind of my last thing about that is, so I think what I'm hearing you both say is the lower we can have a catcher set up and the less she moves, or I like to call them quiet catchers, the less movement we can have in them, both with their body, you know, because you'll see some catchers that when they go out to frame, they're leaning into that pitch to get their head behind it. And what we try to teach our players is just go get it with your pocket. Don't move your body. Don't move your head. Just go get it and be really, really quiet when you receive that. But what I think I'm hearing you say is the lower we can get them to set up and the less movement they have behind the plate, the better their chances are of getting strikes called.
Well, honestly, Coach, in my opinion, even if a catcher does set up higher, is if she's quiet, I don't have there's no issue, because, you know, if she sets up and I have to set up a little higher, that's not a problem. And there's always the occasional pop-up where for some reason or other, your catcher pops up and blocks the view. I mean, it happens, and that's.
So Jason, I'm going to challenge you on that. If you have to set up higher, how are you getting that call at the knees? I want that call at the knees.
I can still, you know, if I set up a little higher, I can still see the bottom of the zone.
Can you though?
Yes. I mean, understanding that I'm
just saying what every coach is going to say when they watch this. That's all.
Well, listen. The main thing, remember, we're not directly behind the catcher. We are off to the side. So her height level has nothing to do with me doing this when I'm off to the side.
Okay.
Right? So how tall she is does not matter if I'm off to the side. Right?
So why
I think when we get into trouble
up...
is, right, I think when we get into trouble is when we try to be directly behind the catcher and she pops up and now we're blinded by the pitch. Whereas if you get into the river and you're focused through the zone, you don't have to worry about how tall or how short the catcher is, right? And like, so these are some of the key things that I'm looking for at my umpire. Is he standing right behind the catcher? If I know that, then I know he's gonna miss balls and strikes. Is he standing to the side of the catcher where he can actually look through the catcher and see that zone? It doesn't matter how tall or how short she is.
So
that's
related to that, yeah, just tips for the umpires here. Are you moving with the pitch as well? Or are you, as the umpire, are you finding your position, you're saying stationary in that position? Or, and here's where I'm going. If you set up on the inside of the plate, and you're looking across the plate, and now that pitcher's throwing a curve or a drop curve, and it's moving towards the outside, are you shifting as the catcher shifts so that you're getting that better angle on the outside, or are you keeping that same angle the whole time? And how does that work just physiologically? I guess you're talking to someone who's never umpired before.
Right.
So.
No, great question. Well, you've got to understand the plate doesn't move.
Mm-hmm.
So in order for me to call that pitch on the plate, I cannot move. Right? I've got my position of where the plate is. I know where that ball is going to cross that plate. If I start moving, my eyes start moving, and I guarantee you're going to start guessing. Right? So the catcher moves, let the catcher move. We've got plenty of gear on to protect us from that ball. The catcher moves, don't go anywhere. Stay in your position, watch, concentrate on that ball crossing the plate, and you should be very accurate on your calls. But if you start moving and you start moving your eyes, there'll be a lot of guessing going on.
I guess that's what, Allison, you led right into my last thought. I say my last thought now, and then in a few minutes, it won't be my last thought.
Oh,
but
that's fine. You can have as many of them as you want.
But no, I think this is really helpful because again, being behind my catcher, and I did not get as low as an umpire would. I did try to set up over the river inside,
Mhm.
and what I found, and I haven't been trained at all to umpire behind the plate, but what I found was it was fairly challenging to really get a good read on that outside pitch, like you're saying, Allison, as far as like a curveball hitting that front corner, a drop ball coming over the outside corner to measure both the height and that outside corner. The inside is easy as far as I was concerned based on my experience, but I think it is a little bit challenging. So I guess I'm just wondering, and again, this is all helpful for us as coaches as we train our catchers. But I guess I'm wondering what information do you get from being set up inside and then reading that outside pitch to help you see that outside pitch? And maybe it was just because I wasn't close enough to the catcher that I had more trouble seeing that outside pitch. But how do you gauge that? What's the focus that helps you make that call on the outside corner?
Good question. And Jason will join in. I found with myself, obviously the more that you do it, just with everything, the more experience you become with calling those pitches, right? So we understand, the thousands of strikes and balls that we've seen, and we're able to slow a lot of that stuff down, right? By picking up the pitch from the pitcher's hand. Things like, if you try to pick it up late, it's gonna pass you by, right? So if you can focus and pick it up from the pitcher's hand, and actually you can slow it down by watching everything that happens as the ball comes in, right? So that there's not a shot, there's not a surprise, there's not a bang moment when the ball hits the glove and you're like, wait, I missed that. So you've got to pick it up early and just tracking the ball all the way into the glove. You cannot take your eyes off. If you give up on a ball before it gets to that plate, I guarantee you're going to miss the call. You have to pause. You have to breathe. Okay. These are things that happens that once the ball hits the glove, replay it in your mind for a quick second. Okay, what did I see? And then come up with your call. And certain things that we are taught that our eye level is supposed to be at the bottom of the zone, at the top of the zone, right? So our eye level must be at the bottom of her sternum, right? So if you get umpires that are now above that batter's sternum and they're looking down at the zone, I can pretty much guarantee they're going to be guessing at what they're calling. If I see an umpire working hard to be at that top of that zone, I think that they're pretty much going to be accurate, right?
That's a great.
So if I see somebody sitting up high, I'm like, nah, he's going to miss one low.
Yeah. I love the point that you just made there, Anthony, with not giving up on the pitch, because I feel like that happens a lot, in particular when you're dealing with a pitcher that does have a good amount of break or has a pitch that breaks late. And, you know, one pitcher in particular that I had, she had a curveball that typically would break late. And I would always have my catchers communicate with the umpires. We worked a lot on that communication early on in the game to let the umpire know, here, curveball breaks late. Just wanted to give you the heads up. Because what we found is a lot of umpires were giving up on that pitch out front. And, you know, it would break back across. She had a backdoor curveball, right? And so they would give up on it, thinking that it's just going to end up inside and then it'd break back over.
One of the things that you can,
that's an important part too, is teaching your catcher how to communicate efficiently with the umpire when you have a situation like that.
I think one of the things as coaches that you can pick up on also, and this is how I train my umpires, is if you hear an umpire as soon as the ball hits the glove, he's coming up with an answer, he's probably not processing that. And then as a coach, I would start sending him information that I know that he's going to make quick decisions on. But and what I'll do is I'll close my eyes and I'll be like, okay, ball hit glove, and he's already ball or strike. It's like bang, ball, bang, strike. And I know that he is not processing that information. I would like to see a delay in between the ball hitting the glove and then coming up with a decision.
I would love to have a whole session on catcher umpire communication and
We can do
coach
that.
catcher communication.
Hey,
I would love it.
Umpire catcher relationships, there's a game there.
Yeah.
That is so important for a receiver to understand that the umpire behind you is important to your success.
Right. Yep.
So if they, in a sense, play the game, you know, for example, you know, if the catcher has a ball and he thinks it's just off the plate and he balls it, throw the ball back. Don't stick it there, kind of showing them up.
Yeah.
You holler out to the catch, where was that? And she says, it was a strike. You know, all of a sudden.
All this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm dying because I'm notorious for yelling at my catcher, but yelling at the umpire.
Right.
Absolutely.
Oh, we know.
Teaching my catchers that first year, they're like a deer in headlights, and they have to understand when it is that I'm actually yelling at them and when I'm trying to get the umpire's attention.
Right.
In the meantime, the catcher's sitting there going, I'm really sorry for my coach. I'm really sorry for my coach. Like, just ignore him. She just, please, I'm working here, coach. I'm working. Leave me alone. Let me do my job. Yeah,
And
I
Steve,
totally.
that backdoor curve is only supposed to fool the batter, not the umpire.
Exactly.
But Coach Huntington, as you're watching your plate umpire work, watch his head movement. You know, if a pitch is in the zone, you know, we track with our nose. We watch the ball into the glove. Okay. If he's got really, if he moves his head a lot, that should pretty much be a ball, especially on the inside. Okay. You know, there's a lot of times the ball comes up underneath the elbow on the inside of the plate. He calls it a ball and everybody's screaming, oh, that's a great pitch. You know, but he chased it, or he tracked it with big head movement. Chances are if he's tracking it correctly, it's a ball. Because when a ball's in the zone, there's very little head movement.
A great tip.
Yeah.
So here's what I'm hearing for today's session, and then we'll have kind of final comments, is for the coach, teach your catchers to be quiet. Low is good, but not required. So quiet is more important. Little movement, up, down, sideways with the glove. For the coach, watch the umpire, track the ball. You know, is he setting up or she setting up eyes at the top of the strike zone? Know the strike zone, and you know, watch their head movement. As for the umpires, what I'm hearing is don't let the catchers be an excuse. Get your eyes at the top of that strike zone in the river on either side, and then track. See tens of thousands of balls. Track it from the pitcher all the way to the glove, so that you're watching that ball come to completion, and you can call that ball or strike based on what you're seeing. Anthony, Jason, did I leave anything out for the umpires as far as tips that we went over today?
No. Another little tip that I picked up on. If I start seeing catches creep, pretty much know that that's going to be a ball, right? So you start creeping to the side. I'm like, okay, that's a pitch out.
That's
So,
interesting. We need to have a conversation about that one day.
Yeah.
I definitely think I can see some more catcher conversations in this down the road.
Yeah.
We gotta go back
Absolutely.
to catcher conversations. There's
Yeah.
so much. My mind is spinning.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, and that's a good little teaser for another episode.
Absolutely.
Coaches, Skeeter and Coach Huntington, how are you feeling? Did I touch on all the kind of tips for the coaches, and any final thoughts?
Yeah, I think so, but I would definitely like follow up on Anthony's just latest comment there. Yeah.
We
No
will
teaser.
definitely make this. We need
Yeah.
to find us a great catching,
Yes.
you know, guest here on the show. So any suggestions, and we'll go after that person.
And the
So,
only
yeah,
other
Skeeter?
tidbit that I had was Anthony's comment about the strike zone being one strike zone.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I would really like to dive into that and really understand that, because I know for sure in the Mid-American Conference when I was coaching at Eastern, there was a certain umpire that literally when I saw him on my plate, I knew I needed to throw my drop ball pitcher because he didn't call anything up in the zone. And so
Right.
that would affect my game day decisions of who's throwing that day. And I think
Right.
that happens a lot in our game. And I love to hear that there is one strike zone, because it drives me nuts when I
Mhm.
hear an umpire say, that's my zone. I'm not
Nope.
giving that pitch all day. I'm like, it's not your zone. It
not.
happens to be all of our zone.
Yes.
Same
All right.
zone.
So are we
So
still
for-
teasing for more of these
I was
meetings?
gonna say, for
That's-
anybody who's seen the How a Coach Approaches the Umpire episode, you
Yes.
just got a preview of what Melissa's passionate disagreement looks like. So let's wrap this one up today. I know we've gone over time. I appreciate everybody taking the time to be here. This was a wonderful conversation. Jason, Coach Huntington, thank you so much for being part of this and contributing. Hopefully it's helpful for lots of umpires and coaches out there, and that this whole series is something
It's
that
my pleasure.
is helpful. You're welcome.
Thanks so
Yeah,
much for
thank you.
asking.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Absolutely.
Coach Huntington.
Yep. Thank you, guys.
All right. Bye, everybody.